Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of my Busch Gardens Williamsburg recreation. Last episode, we wrapped up a good chunk of the rides in the Italy section of the park, started working on Pantheon, and for today's episode, I have pretty much finished Pantheon at this point, so it's time to show it off. So we've got a lot of work done between the last episode and this one. It might not look like it at first glance, but there's been a pretty significant amount of change in all of the Italy area. Obviously Pantheon is the most obvious point. So all of the infrastructure, supports, station buildings, all that stuff has been completed. We have a nice little station over here, some transfer track, all the stuff that you need for a good functioning roller coaster. One thing I mentioned I want to do was clean up the view of the track a little bit. I did replace the boosters with some single rail track to act as fake boosters, and I think it looks pretty okay. And then we have a lot of custom support work in here. The top hat and back spike have some custom lattice supports made out of single rail coaster. This is always pretty tricky to do. The back one is a lot simpler, so that one turned out okay. I was able to find a good example from another park and copy the design a little bit, tweak it for my purposes. The top hat is a lot trickier. Kind of did the same thing as the spike and just kind of try to build it out a bit chunkier. Spent way too much time trying to copy the real life structure, which turned out to be pretty much impossible to do. You cannot replicate that kind of structure in OpenRCT2. The angles just don't work. So you can have to wing it with the pieces you have available. The single rail coaster kind of worked out okay. I won't say that I love the way that the top hat supports look, but good enough for now. One other thing you've probably noticed is I added a lot of decoration, and I say a lot in quotes, inside the Pantheon area. If you've ridden this coaster or if you've seen videos, you might have noticed that there is literally no theming in this area at all in real life. It is just a big empty field, which a lot of people made fun of when the park opened with this coaster, that they would go to all the effort to build this thing and then not theme it at all. So this is going to be one point where I am deviating from reality a bit more than usual. Man, looking at this big empty field when building this coaster just made me feel so sad. It looked so boring. And you hate having a boring park in RCT. You want there to be something interesting to look at all over the place. And this was just not interesting to look at. So I added some trees, added some little garden areas over here, some little temple buildings, just to give it a little bit of extra life. A little bit of movement here with this entertainer, little fountain. I think it looks quite nice. And I don't think it would have been a lot of effort for Busch Gardens to do something like this, but they didn't, and we're living with it. So it is what it is. So yeah, that's my Pantheon. I think it looks pretty sweet. I'm pretty happy with it. So not a whole lot of other exciting stuff I've built for this episode, despite it being pretty far in the future compared to the last build. If you're paying attention to the year down here in the corner, this is on year 37, and I think the last episode was on year 30, so it's been several hours of build, and I think most of it was for all this Pantheon stuff. But I've also been spending some time working on landscaping. Since Apollo's Chariot is kind of out here on its own, there's not much else to do over here. I figured I might as well build out some of the landscaping here, get something that's looking nice, get some examples of what I want the landscaping to look like for the rest of the park, experiment with that a little bit. So we have the river, the major river here that kind of forks around this little peninsula that Apollo's Chariot lives on. And just building it up with a bunch of trees. Looks pretty nice. Everyone loves a good tree. Put trees on your stuff, it's gonna look good. And then I've also started sculpting out the edge of the park a little bit. We're going to be doing the same thing we did with Dorney, I think, and kind of black tiling around the edge to give it a kind of nice round shape when it's done. At least I hope it'll be nice and round. I think it always looks nicer than having just a plain square rectangular plot. Makes it look a bit more interesting when it's zoomed out anyway. Other thing we have built over here, I started working a little bit on some of these back roads that are used by maintenance workers over here, trying to sculpt out where these are going to go, because I do want to have a lot of back roads in my build. Even if they're not going to be functional, I still think that they're going to be interesting to look at, so I like having those in there. And of course we have our main parking gate here that you have to drive through to get to the parking lot. So I have got that started. I don't think it's finished yet. There's still a bit more detailing I want to do here. Obviously, and then the road around it needs to be finished out. Probably not going to get back to this until a lot later when we do the parking lot stuff. Probably near the end of the series. But since we were over here, I figured it would be a fun little detail to throw in. You might notice I'm using a bit more of that golf station roof for the structure, and I think it looks pretty solid. I'm a big fan of these pieces. I need to find some more excuses to use them. But yeah, I think that's about it. Again, not as much to talk about with this one, a little bit of a shorter episode because I didn't build very many new things, but there has been just a lot of cleaning up the stuff that already exists, finishing up the bits here in Italy that I haven't quite finished yet, filling in some corners. I want to try to finish these areas as much as I can before I move on to the next one. I think that worked out really well for Dorney. I want to keep that pattern going here. So compared to last episode, you might have noticed, yeah, a lot more of these corners filled in with trees and stuff. I've got the train station here almost ready to go. The big bridge over that takes you to Pantheon. Some infrastructure here for the river rapids, like the pump house over here. Just little things like that. Not very interesting to talk about, but they do take time and they do help make the park look a lot nicer when you have them in there. Even if you don't really notice them right away, all those details really do add up to make a good looking park, at least in my opinion. So, but anyway, that's gonna do it for today. I think we're about done with Italy at this point. So I'm not sure where we're gonna go next. We could either go take our bridge up this way towards Germany, or we could cut back around here to the Scotland area. I think it might be easier to do that since it's closer to some parts of the park we already have finished. And I'm not really sure how I'm going to connect these bits over here. This is kind of the last bit of the puzzle piece, I think, connecting Germany to Italy over here with this bridge. So I think I'm going to save that for very last. So I think next time we're going to be heading over towards Scotland and seeing what we build over here. But anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.